So today we're joined with Dr Simon Crook from Crooked Science, and we're going to be talking about all things the New South Wales syllabus at stage 4 and 5. Welcome, Simon. Can you give us a little bit of an intro about yourself?
I've been teaching science since 1994, originally in the UK, and since 2003 in New South Wales. For the past 10 years, I've actually been running Crooked Science, so running a lot of PL all over New South Wales and working with teachers and students in primary with the stage 6 syllabuses, and for the last few years in particular around this new 7 to 10 syllabus.
With the new syllabus, something that I wanted to talk about was some of the things that I really like about some of these new changes. And personally for me, one of those is the inclusion of data science. And yes. I know we were talking about this just before. But I'm curious to know, what are some of the things that you really like about this?
Okay, so there's quite a few things like about the new syllabus, and talking to a lot of teachers, what I'm hearing from them. So I think the thing I hear most often is that people appreciate it being a lot more explicit.
Yeah.
So there's no more kind of wishy-washy stuff. How do we interpret this? How far do we go?
It's clearer.
It is a lot clearer. It's a lot more explicit. So that's just helpful for teachers.
Mm-hmm.
I think as well, it is more rigorous, and people have no problem with that. And so we wait with bated breath there.
The inclusion of something like data science, and I do love that you say
yes.
data. We joked about that before, is that students are going to be going into stage 6 more well equipped.
Yes.
That's a real positive thing.
Absolutely. So data science is one of the big wins in this new syllabus.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So to your point there, data literacy is even coming into the new K-6 syllabus, which is great. But now we've got stage 4 and 5, data science 1 and 2. It's a big win because as a society, we need a lot more data literacy. So students across New South Wales are going to be picking that up in science as a mandatory aspect.
Really helps students develop their critical thinking skills and be able to determine what's science and what's pseudoscience.
Yes, which is always fun to investigate that.
What is this new structure of the new syllabus like?
Each stage has 8 focus areas.
Now, I'm going to pause you there because that's a bit of a new word for teachers.
So what teachers call modules currently in stage 6 are now called focus areas 7 to 10, and also in other stages with their new syllabuses. So we have focus areas. Now within focus areas, each focus area has its one knowledge and understanding outcome, or recommended, shall we say, working scientifically outcomes. And then within those, you have content groups. So they're the subtopics, and within those content groups, you have content points. The interesting thing about the content groups, though, they're what are currently called inquiry questions, or they are presented with an inquiry question to stimulate, if you like, the learning intention.
Yeah.
But that language isn't used anymore because
it's changed.
Yeah, inquiry is a bit of a dirty word out there, and all for the wrong reasons.
Yes, which is interesting because being a scientist is all about inquiring about the world around us.
It is. So unfortunately, some of the powers that be have conflated inquiry learning in, say, English and the humanities, that has been linked to the demise of Australian education standards, with scientific inquiry, which is the scientific methods of the last 400 years.
Which is not the same thing.
Which is not the same thing, and it is what we are about. My recommendation to teachers is, if that construct of inquiry questions really helps with the learning in their classroom, with their pedagogy, then to actually engineer them back in.
Is a good thing.
Yeah, because it's a good overarching learning intention.
I know that it's something that we use a lot in Stile and that I like to use in my classrooms are things like questions boards. So why wouldn't you have some sort of driving question to help drive a unit of work?
Absolutely. And when it knits everything together in a subtopic, I think there's a lot of merit for it.
One of the things that NESA have included in their documentation is this new graphic that sort of maps out the different focus areas. Let's unpack that graphic.
Absolutely. So to the credit of NESA, there are 16 focus areas to do over 16 terms. That in theory removes a lot of and in practice, I would say for a lot of schools, removes a lot of the decision making that teachers have to do, with just the massive teacher workloads. They've removed that kind of decision making with the very best of intentions.
Yeah.
However, I think this does also build in some misconceptions in some quarters about what teachers can do and where they're not actually as restricted as they may think. The sequence of focus areas, the rationale there was that they are designed in that sequence. So NESA have articulated this, but it's not mandatory that teachers follow that sequence.
And I think that's a really important thing to sort of highlight for people, because I think people look at that graphic and they go, 16 focus areas, 16 terms, I need to teach one per term in this exact order.
Look, I'll be honest, I think 90% of schools will do that, particularly first time of asking, because it'll just make their lives easier. But as we settle into things, we'll actually see where there's opportunities to do things differently and creatively. And some people will recognise that in advance and be able to find the time to put in that preparation to do things slightly differently there. So we'll talk more about data science later, but that's the big one, just within the bigger picture, because we either do term 4 year 8, term 4 year 10 as it stands on data science, which for some people they might think great, that provides an amazing, let's say, with your year 10s at the very end of the year, giving them something meaty to get their teeth into, and they're still doing some good science. And for some people, they'll be thinking, oh my gosh, doing data for a whole term with year 10, I can't think of anything worse, depending on your school
at the
community.
end of the year.
At the end of the year. So the suggestion that data science can be integrated. So there are opportunities, and I think no-brainers for integration, but there might also be opportunities for some perhaps standalone. But the important thing there is there's choice around how to deal with data science. Within any stage, so stage 4, stage 5, you could rejig.
So Simon, just to clarify, teachers don't have to teach the focus areas in the exact order that they are shown in this graphic?
That is correct, Chloe. They don't have to. I think most people will to begin with, but they don't have to. You can't move focus areas between stages.
Yeah,
so you can only teach stage. Yeah, absolutely. You can only teach stage 4 and stage 4 and stage 5 and stage 5, but you could teach them in a different order, as an example. Teaching
them in a different order based on your unique context and your students is recommended.
It is there in the small print, and I think just holistically as professionals and as experienced professionals, that's a no-brainer. And it's our prerogative. And this is where I think people really need to understand, we've got lots of different structures of schools. We've got very big schools, but we've also got small, regional, rural schools that might have stage classes. They might have cross-stage classes. Or we could just have schools that have got integrated STEM program. It's the prerogative of a school to teach the best way for that school community, which could, literally dictate a creative rejig of the scope and sequence, let's say.
I've even seen instances in schools where you might have a very big school but with very limited labs.
Yes.
In which case you might be running sort of 2 reverse orders of your scope and sequence across 1 year level, so that you're not teaching the same focus area at the same time, so that you can get the labs that you need when you need them.
Absolutely. On that kind of like same train of thought, I think a very common situation, we timetable backwards. Year 12 get priority in terms of teachers and rooms. By the time you get to year 7, they've really got the short end of the stick in terms of access to labs, even access to specialist teachers. So often a year 7 class might have some lessons in lab, some lessons outside of a lab. So I know we'll be unpacking some of the focus areas later, but just to focus in on observing the universe, first cab off the rank. If your year 7s, if they have a mix between lab time and
regular classroom
time, then I really recommend you teach practice of science in the lab space and the nature of science in the classroom. That's a no-brainer. So you teach them in parallel. Because, they've just come out of primary school. They're dying to do science,
And they're so excited.
They're so excited, and they think it's explosions and mixing potions and glassware and goggles.
Magic.
So we teach them it's not potions and magic.
It's not.
That's a lovely natural progression.
And it builds the practical skills that we really need to start to develop in those early years as well.
Very much so. Yes.
All right. I want to talk about data science or data science. One of the things that I've noticed teachers having a real big misconception with is this idea that data science has to be taught discretely and in its own block, and that it has to be taught like at the end of a year. I thought it might be nice for us to unpack Data Science 1 and Data Science 2. We can look at where they're situated and how we might teach them.
Absolutely. So I think this is one of the biggest misconceptions out there, and one of the most important things to talk about, because this is the big new content in the syllabus anyway.
Yep.
So short answer is teachers don't have to do it in one big block at the end of a stage.
Hooray!
And to back myself up there, I will quote from the NESA paperwork. Yeah. The data science focus area can be taught alongside other focus areas or aligned to students' interests, local contexts, or school environments. And when I've done this in my own workshops, I've added the coda or taught as a separate unit, because that's how it's presented. But then we've got this kind of like more professional approach, but that's only in the small print, which is what's given rise to that misconception where there's a mixed message there.
Yeah, and I think that that's come down to people just looking at that graphic and going, oh, data science is tacked on at the end. I have to teach it separately and at the end and by itself, which, as you just quoted, is not the case, which is great. Yeah. And to link into sort of how we've approached it at Stile is Data Science 1, we've decided we're going to include it alongside another focus area. So Data Science 1, we've included alongside change. And then Data Science 2, our genetics and evolution units, which is a great place to look at big data, I think.
There's one big caveat to that whole, you can integrate it in. I have heard from some meetings that other people have had, but with representatives from NESA, what they're worried about is, and I know this from other educational authorities as well, is about that idea of the word integration. A lot of authorities, people with responsibility for the education within their jurisdiction, when things are integrated, they often don't happen to get watered down. So that's what the worry is.
Sprinkled throughout the year, and they don't get
absolutely. So my recommendation is, if you are going to integrate data science or aspects of data science, is you actually keep a log of how many hours you spend integrating during the year to demonstrate that you've done essentially a term's worth of data science over that stage.
In the Stile teaching plans, if you're looking at Data Science 1, I go to say data now. If you look at Data Science 1, you'll see that, yes, you've got the change tag on those units, but you can see the lessons are all tagged with Data Science 1. So you can see exactly where you're teaching it. And that's why our content team made the decision not to integrate across more than one focus area, because then things can get watered down, as you said, and sprinkled throughout the year and then not taught properly. So have a look at those teaching plans and you'll be able to see our beautiful tags so that you know exactly what you're teaching and when you're teaching it. Let's get into the nitty gritty, as we say, of Data Science 1.
I would recommend, if I was running a science department, I would take a hybrid approach. So I think you can almost split Data Science 1 into like two groupings. So for the first content group is data. So it's almost like the what is data.
Yeah.
Now that can be taught as like a mini standalone, let's say at the end of year 8, or it could be integrated into another focus area. The next two are scientific models and applications of models. Now that's just bread and butter science.
It is.
I mean, straight away with observing the universe, when we get to the space science, we'll be looking at models immediately there. Those two are crying out to be integrated, and perhaps in multiple occasions, whether that's explicitly or implicitly, we're going to be doing it anyway. That is our bread and butter.
Yeah.
Then we get to collecting, using and analysing data sets. So I think this is one of the most exciting parts of data science. I think the students will enjoy the most.
I think so too.
Because it'd be more about them.
Yeah.
Now that could quite easily be part of some kind of like standalone at the end of year 8. Might be a nice end of year 8 kind of activity, but quite easily could be integrated into any focus area. So getting students working with perhaps, I don't know, Google Forms to collect data and then looking at different ways they can present that data and analysing it. They can really take ownership of it. I mean, you could even go beyond science and just focus more on the idea of manipulating data. So they could be surveying people about, what pets they own, which also helps us with, say, differentiation. So for weaker students, we could make it more to perhaps their interest and less about, say, some hardcore science.
And if you wanted to bring back in this idea of inquiry questions, right? Your inquiry question would be more about the data than it would be about the science. And then that would be a really good way to differentiate by, different topics that students might like to explore.
Absolutely. And this could be students collecting the data, addressing the data science, which could also be part of a depth study, which could be part of an explicit focus area.
Are we hitting more than one focus area and plus depth studies at the same time?
Yes. I mean, maybe that's good teaching.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also buys us time in a profession that's very time poor.
Coming back to that NESA graphic, I'm just looking at that and going, oh my gosh, if I had to teach everything completely discretely, I'd probably run out of time in a year.
Absolutely. And this, we've got to think the art and science of teaching. And the very last content group is Data Science 1 in context. As we've said, every last content group is in context.
Yep.
And they talk about scientific models as mathematical models or computer models.
Yeah.
Now, again, a lot of people have tried to kind of like blend in STEM with varying success, and often coding is seen as, in some cases, the be-all and end-all of STEM. And when that's like a tag on, that often falls flat on its face. This is now legislated. It's in the syllabus just as a mini part. But if they were to do, say, some computer modeling, simulations, they could be using Scratch, but wonderful differentiation opportunities, because there might be some kids out there who know Python, and then they can work within whatever means they want. They could be doing stop motion videos to demonstrate their models. So lots of authentic opportunities there. It's quite exciting.
And one of the ways that I like to encourage teachers to support differentiation is through using our open question response in Stile, because students can then, do stop motion and submit their video, or they can draw a picture of their model or whatever it is. So there's like lots of different ways for students to demonstrate their understanding of something.
Absolutely.
Which I think is really fun.
Yeah, I agree. In a similar vein to Data Science 1, I see two distinct parts.
Yep.
The first content group, investigating questions and claims.
Mm-hmm.
That is bread and butter scientific inquiry. That is working scientifically. It's basically high order working scientifically. You really get into that critical thinking about methodology, validity and reliability, which is great. Bringing these in earlier explicitly. A lot of schools do it anyway, but it is now explicit. And, we can be bringing this down to stage 4 as well, of course, because it's not necessarily the best thing that students are capable of by the time they get to stage 6.
No.
So the sooner the better. So that is crying out to be integrated in any focus area. Would be where there's experimentation, it'd be ripe for opportunities. And then the other two parts are pseudoscience and the large data sets and scientific argumentation. Now, they could be authentically integrated in. I think those two could be standalones, either separately or together, let's say at the end of year 10, if you wanted to do that. Now, pseudoscience, as it currently stands, is kind of overlapping with the current investigating science. It's certainly a segue into investigating science. I see a lot of fun with this.
I know we've had a lot of fun with this too.
So, provide a lot of individual choice for students to investigate things and, have a look at some of the nonsense that's out there. I think it was it Carl Sagan who said that every newspaper has an astrology section but no astronomy section.
Ain't that the truth though?
And, there's particularly with the rise of social media, I think this is where we really have a way in with the students, because you look at some of the nonsense that's on social media that people are believing just because influencers are saying it, and get them to think critically and to investigate it. Yeah. And so we can really go to town there.
It's actually funny that you say that, because one of my favorite style lessons is designed around like a social media feed, and it's got all these like ridiculous advertisements in there, like snake oil this and coffee enema that, and
yes,
like, you know what I mean? That these are real things that our students are being exposed to.
Look, absolutely. And, you know, like we've both been smiling about this and saying we can have a lot of fun here, but there is a serious side of it. Because whilst it's harmless, it is harmless and we can have a laugh. But where people are actually making choices to ignore evidence-based science, then that can have devastating consequences.
Yeah.
On the flip side, I think we need to also have some sensitivity here, depending on where our schools are in various places where there's a lot of alternative communities.
Yeah.
And perhaps a lot of families and parents actually work in, say, alternative therapies.
Yeah.
You know, this is legislated. The students have to learn about pseudoscience and to think critically.
You know, we're mandated to teach students about spotting the difference between science and pseudoscience, right? And to think critically. We're not mandated to tell them exactly what to think. No. And I think that that's an important distinction. And I think as long as we're equipping students with the skills to critically evaluate something, then they can come to their own conclusions. It's about what they want to do moving forward. And I think that that's a really nice way that we can approach things a bit more sensitively.
Absolutely. And, you know, students will arrive with certain preconceptions, and they're only young people as well. So we can't be rubbing their nose in it.
No.
If I can offer an anecdote, I was actually at a primary school many years ago now, and a year 6 teacher there was going to teach the students that the moon landings were fake.
Oh.
So what we did was we surveyed the students beforehand. Do you think the moon landings were real or fake? Then we got them to do their own research.
Mm-hmm.
And then we asked them if they'd changed their opinion, and then we surveyed the class again.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had a debate as myself as the scientist and the teacher as the conspiracy theorist.
Ooh.
And then we asked the students again. And you know, there was a shift, but it wasn't like everyone shifted to the science. And you can just take them one at a time and actually explain the science behind them. And also you look at the reliability of sources, which is a big part of critical thinking anyway, and reporting and communication.
There's ways to discuss things without just telling someone no.
Absolutely. And then the next part of data science 2 were the large data sets and scientific argumentation. Now that is very much with the current science extension in mind.
Yeah, this is probably my favourite section.
Well, this is the highest order, arguably in the whole syllabus. Like this, you know, this you've got science extension is the highest order in stage 6, and this is segueing, you know, easing people in. So just
where the
within
most fun's had.
yes, so teachers might need to do a little bit of homework here as well. Things like univariate analysis, bivariate analysis.
Yeah,
people might not have done this
for a little bit. Yeah,
masters or degrees, or maybe haven't actually formally done it themselves.
Yeah,
you know, previously.
And the more that I'm hearing you talk about, you know, what we need to be teaching throughout data science, the more it stands out to me that we're not just teaching data, we're teaching data science.
Yes.
And so to me, it makes a lot of sense for us to teach it alongside the science.
Where that benefits the learning.
Yeah.
Absolutely. First of all, there's the permission structure we've already established. People can do that if they choose.
Yep.
And then it's looking about where it's going to be optimal for their local context. That will give rise to some mini challenges that we'll discuss later in terms of scope and sequence, because you can't suddenly just lose a term.
Yeah.
But by putting things in, if you do choose to go down that road, that's going to stretch things out to perhaps straddle terms. But that's where people can make choices and evolve those choices over time.
And I think that's what we really wanted to reassure people of today, is that there is opportunity for you to make these choices.
Yes. And
it's something that at Stile we've definitely done. We've definitely made these integrations, but that's just one way that you might teach it. If you have, you know, you've still got choice to teach it other ways. Now, depth studies, we have to do at least 5 hours of depth studies per year level.
Yes.
In Stile, we've actually constructed our scope and sequence so that we've got at least 10 per year level, which is great. But one of the things that I've noticed some teachers talking about is, do we have to teach depth studies separately in blocks? Is it kind of like our data science points? But no, it's completely integrated. Isn't that right?
Yes. I mean, look, I see the depth studies as being one of the real positives here. It's not prescriptive. It's very empowering. So first off, this is almost like easing people into stage 6. So it's like a precursor there. But at first, some people were a little bit agitated because it's now said that there's one depth study per year. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean it has to be like a massive SRP type. They're recommending 5 hours of class time per year. So that's a recommendation. That's a mandate. And, Stile have got 10 hours worth. So, there's, as you're saying, there's opportunities there. Let's think about this. Now, I know some people in authorities get a bit twitchy when we say don't change things, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Yeah. If schools have a current, let's say, SRP model that works, like they're going to absolutely gun SRP in year 8, let's say a gun one in year 10 as an example, they can keep those.
Yeah.
They might integrate them in different contexts. They might be already integrated. They might be semi-standalone. If they work for you, and often it's a case of the logistics, then you can still do that. At the same time, there is opportunity here to do more if you're a little bit dissatisfied.
Yep.
But also, with the nature of depth studies, they can be a prac investigation or a series of pracs, a secondary source investigation or a series of secondary source investigations, but they can be presentations, research assignments, or fieldwork reports.
Like there's so much there.
So there's so much.
Yeah.
So there's no mandate around assessments and depth study, unlike in, say, stage 6, but there's plenty of opportunity to use depth studies for assessments. Yep. And again, if you've got some absolute gun, let's say, assessments, you can keep them in, that they might be linked to excursions. Yeah. And you've got this annual thing and, the kids look forward to it and it works really well.
Yeah.
You can keep those constructs there, maybe with tweaking. I see this as a win-win.
I think so, because it's something teachers are already doing.
Yes.
And so, like you said, we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We're not completely reinventing the wheel. But as you say, it's an opportunity for us to go back and reevaluate our programs and say, are we happy with the way that we're doing things, or do we want to change things slightly?
Look, absolutely. So we can't just keep doing the same old because.
Yeah.
And we've got to have an honest conversation in terms of, what's tired, what's outdated, what isn't appropriate for
what's
no
longer relevant.
So all of that has to go. And I think with the constructs around this idea, with the depth studies.
And for people who are using the Stile scope and sequence with the new syllabus, you'll see that we've tagged the curriculum with a depth study tag. So you'll be able to see which lessons are actually include a depth study as they're integrated throughout different units. We do also have across 7 to 10 2 specific units that are standalone depth study units. You don't have to teach them as standalone, but if you want to, you can. Just because we've included them as separate units doesn't mean that that's what NESA sort of advocates for. You can completely teach them integrated. We've just included them because we had a little bit of extra space in our scope and sequence, and we thought it would be a good opportunity to get some of those extra hours in. If you want to see the working scientifically skills that are, or outcomes, I should say, that are aligned to each of the units, you can view those in our scope and sequence documentation that you can download from Stile. Now, working scientifically has been incorporated into the focus areas, and one of the things that we've documented is some of the changes. And so if we look at, I've just got here our scope and sequence or implementation guide with the new syllabus, and on page 14, we've got this graphic that kind of highlights some of the major changes and minor changes. One of the major changes is observing.
Yes, so this is, I guess, more of an FYI. So they've added one extra working scientifically outcome. So we've gone from 7 to 8. It's interesting because it's called observing, and obviously we observe when we conduct. when you unpack observing as a working scientific outcome, it's more to do with the instrumentation.
Yeah, it's uses scientific tools and instruments for observations.
Absolutely. So I think that's important for students to learn more about instrumentation, and then it's a great opportunity to start looking at the idea of systematic error and random error at an earlier age than stage 6. And then if we look at how working scientifically, as you say, has been added into the different focus areas, I think something that teachers should note is, with the best of intentions, NESA have kind of allocated certain working scientifically outcomes to certain focus areas. I think the message there is you don't have to do all working scientifically outcomes for every single focus area. There isn't enough time.
If you want to see the working scientifically skills that are, or outcomes I should say, that are aligned to each of the units, you can view those in our scope and sequence documentation that you can download from Stile.